And Michael Snyder's got an interesting article I kind of took a liking to. He's got the economiccollapseblog.com website. Another site with great information. Is this the generation that is going to financially destroy America? Well, the answer is yes, but in all fairness, kind of like doesn't matter who the president is, the train's going down the track, doesn't matter who the conductor is, the tracks have been pre-laid a long time ago, the train's going there and it's going off a cliff. Doesn't matter who's in the front of the thing. We're all in the back, and that's all that we know. We're going off the, we think we're not going off the cliff. We've got a great guy up there. He's going to lead us to, the promised land, like in Mad Max. Lead us to the promised land. Speaking of Mad Max, did you guys see that video that's been running around the internet? Just look up on YouTube. Mad Max Venezuela. Motorcycles all over the place, some cars, pickup trucks, chasing down a like semi-truck kind of a thing with salt bag or sugar bags, 40, 50 pound bags of sugar, whatever. Throwing like fire bombs at the thing. It stops. I thought I was watching a Mad Max movie. Real life. Oh, the guy must have Mad Max Part 2 now. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not That's not Mel. What's his name? I almost called him Mel Fisher, the treasure hunter guy. Not Mel Gibson. Is that Mel? What about that little animal kid with the boomerang underground? Remember that kid? What the hell is it? Where's he at? And I could have swore I saw that kid riding a bike one day down near Highway 301 in Tampa. We were going to lunch one day at a special spot we go to every once in a while. And we were just driving back, guys at work, and there's this teenage kid thing that looked like, 80s hair metal band that hadn't been brushed in a few decades. And me and this guy, Mark, I work with, we looked at each other. We've never in our lives talked to each other about Mad Max. First of all, we always talk about the movie Friday, throwing stupid lines back and forth, about Friday. We love that comedy, He turns back. I'm looking at him. The kid, he's like, yeah, Mad Max, the boomerang kid. I was like, almost stop the car. I gotta take a picture of this. I've never seen anything. It was him. Holy crap. Speaking of that, though, did you see this is Venezuela right now? It's Mad Max in real life. And they did that. It wasn't a government truck. It wasn't the government that they hate. It was one of their fellow citizens doing, hey, I got a job. I don't know about you suckers, but I got a job to do. I'm trucking this. I'm a truck driver. I'm trucking this down here. I don't want to lose my job. And your fellow citizens decided we need that sugar bad. It was just sugar. You can't just sit there and eat sugar. And they were willing to throw these Molotov cocktails and firebombs at one of their fellow citizens driving a truck for bags of sugar. You can't eat it. You're gonna eat, hey, what's for dinner tonight? Half a cup of sugar. No, you'll get sick. But you might be able to barter with people. You might be able to barter, right? Maybe they'll go across the border, Colombia or something. Hey, or is it Brazil or both? Whatever. Barter. Okay, 50-pound sugar bag. I'll take anything. Any kind of food. There you go. But again, in all fairness, doesn't matter who's in charge. This is history repeating for the same reasons past empires have fallen. I keep talking about the American empire is going down the tubes. I hate to say that because I live here. I don't want to see that. I don't want to be, potentially be a part of that. I just got a freaking house. I'm about to go there tomorrow and meet the guy, which is today, Saturday. Homeowner's going to show me around all the, the cool features and stuff that I don't know what the hell, He's like, he's got a lot of stuff to show you how to do stuff, like work all this stuff, and he's got a bunch of stuff he needs to show you. All right, I'll come check it out. Cool. I'm buying a house. It's more house than I ever thought I'd buy in my life. I don't need this. You don't need this, right? But I got a duty to do. Realist news. I got to keep it real. Prepare us all for this, right? Did you know that the federal government is going to spend more than $4 trillion this year, he says. I'll be honest, I didn't know that. And I want to see where he gets the number from, because I didn't know that's a lot in 1 year. I did not know that. To put it into perspective, U.S. GDP for the entire year of 2017 is going to be somewhere between 18 and 19 trillion dollars. So when you are talking about $4 trillion, you are talking about a huge chunk of our economy. But of course, the federal government doesn't bring in $4 trillion a year. At the beginning of Barack Obama's first term, we were $10.6 trillion in debt. And now we're nearly $20 trillion in debt. That means that we have been adding more than $1 trillion per year to the national debt. When you break that down, that means that we have essentially been stealing more than $100 million from our future generations of Americans every single hour of every single day to pay for our debt-fueled lifestyle. Even Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen is warning that this is not sustainable, she says, and yet we just keep on doing it. Nobody can pretend that what we have today is the kind of limited federal government that our founders intended and actually started us off on. And what kind of government did you guys come up with, they were asked, founding fathers? A republic, if you can keep it, was the reply. Do we have the republic with a Republican form of government? You know the answer to that. Not a chance in hell are we there now. Gone. Those days are long gone. Nobody can pretend that what we have today is the kind of limited federal government that our founders intended. When federal spending accounts for more than 20% of GDP, it is hard to argue that we haven't moved very far down the road toward socialism. As I mentioned above, total federal spending will surpass $4 trillion for the first time ever in 2017. She's only 17. 2017. I had to give you the hairband. Who the hell was playing that song? Was that Warrant? Was that Warrant? Don't remember. Both the Congressional Budget Office and the White House Office of Management and Budget project that federal spending will top $4 trillion for the first time in fiscal 2017, which began on October 1st, 2016, and will end on September 30th. In its update to the Budget and Economic Outlook 2017 to 2027, published last week, CBO projected that total federal spending in fiscal 2017 will hit just over $4 trillion. I was recently asked how we are going to pay for a $4 trillion government if we abolish the income tax like I am proposing. Well, the truth is that we would have to dramatically reduce the size and scope of the federal government. Our founders always intended for the individual state governments to be much stronger than they are right now, and it is time for us to restore that constitutional balance. Speaking of which, go state by state if you just feel like doing this one day online. State by state, maybe even type it in that way. How much land does the federal government own in each state? And watch the shocking response or reply you get, or data that comes back to you in certain states. Oh my God, they own that much? They own more of the state than the state that? Federal lands. Yes, they do. What do we get for it? You guys using that land to, bring in some extra money? Anything? No. Oh, you're going to sell it to the Chinese so they can put a solar farm there and then charge us. Oh, okay. That sounds good. Well, the truth is that... Oh, wait. Whoa. Next one. Something desperately needs to be done because we have a federal government that is completely and totally out of control. Even the Congressional Budget Office agrees that we are headed toward absolute disaster if our leaders in Washington don't start displaying some fiscal responsibility. Again, I got to be real clear here. This is so far beyond the point of no return. They can't, leaders in Washington don't start displaying some fiscal responsibility. There's no such thing. It's beyond that now. You can't do it now. You could have put the fire out when it was just the bathroom with your extinguisher. Now it's your entire living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom with your one little extinguisher in your hand. It's beyond. Have a nice day. Don't even waste it. Take your extinguisher with you and go outside. Hope the fire department gets there quick enough, right? That's what we're talking about. So it says a large and continuously growing federal debt, and I guess this is from the CBO. A large and continuously growing federal debt would increase the chance of a fiscal crisis in the United States. Well, hold on, CBO. I guess you did, speaking of CBO, I guess you didn't get the memo from Janet Yellen the other day, who said, we won't see another crisis in our lifetimes. But specifically, investors might become less willing to finance federal borrowing unless they were compensated with higher returns. In other words, we want higher interest rates. If the rates went up just on what debt we have out there now, would be devastating. Any meaningful raising of the rates would be devastating to the taxpayer having to make those payments. It's the equivalent of an adjustable rate mortgage. Hey, I'm locked in at 5%. What's this? It went up to 8%. Oh my gosh, I can't afford that. I'm getting kicked out of my house. That's what will happen here. Specifically, investors might become less willing to finance federal borrowing unless they were compensated with higher returns. If so, interest rates on federal debt would rise abruptly, dramatically increasing the cost of government borrowing. That increase would reduce the market value of outstanding government securities, and investors could lose money. The resulting losses for mutual funds, pension funds, insurance companies, banks, and other holders of government debt might be large enough to cause some financial institutions to fail, creating a fiscal crisis. An additional result would be a higher cost for private sector borrowing because uncertainty about the government's responses could reduce confidence in the viability of private sector enterprises. It is impossible for anyone to accurately predict whether or when such a fiscal crisis might occur in the United States. And particularly, the debt to GDP ratio has no identifiable tipping point to indicate that a crisis is likely or imminent. All else being equal, however, the larger a government's debt, the greater the risk of a fiscal crisis. The likelihood of such a crisis also depends on conditions in the economy. If investors expect continued growth, they are generally less concerned about the government's debt burden. Conversely, substantial debt can reinforce more generalized concern about an economy. Thus, fiscal crises around the world often have begun during recessions and in turn have exacerbated them. And Janet Yellen raising the rates when she shouldn't be raising the rates could exacerbate some foreseeable crises. But she said there will never be one again in our lifetimes. I get so frustrated with Republicans in Congress because they are supposed to be watching out for us. During the 2010 elections, one of the biggest midterm landslides of all time gave Republicans control of the House of Representatives, and they have had it ever since. One of the pillar token? No, not here, friends. One of the pillars of the Tea Party revolution was fiscal responsibility, but the national debt has just continued to explode. When the Republicans took control of the House in early 2011, we were about $14 trillion in debt, and now we are nearly $20 trillion in debt. We have been betrayed, and those that have done this to us need to be held accountable. Of course, the big reason why our politicians never want to control spending is because they know what it will do to our economy. During the Obama years, we spent more than $9 trillion that we didn't have. If we could somehow go back and take $9 trillion out of the economy over those 8 years, we would be in the worst depression in the U.S. history right now. Nobody in Washington wants to be responsible for plunging us into an economic depression, and so they just keep stealing from the future in order to prop things up in the short term. And a similar thing could be said about central bank intervention. If the Federal Reserve and other global central banks had not pumped trillions upon trillions of dollars into the financial system over the past 8 years, we would be in the midst of a horrific economic nightmare right now. But now all of that hot money has created epic financial bubbles all over the planet. Two of the most important ones that are going to be devastating: housing market, which includes rental market, and the stock market bubble. Global central banks now have more than $20 trillion in assets on their balance sheets, and the world has more than $217 trillion in debt. the desperate measures that national governments and central banks have been taking have delayed the coming crisis. But they have also guaranteed that it will be far worse than it could have been otherwise. The stage is set for the worst financial crisis in world history, and the only way that it can continue to be delayed is for our leaders to continue to inflate the bubbles larger and larger and larger. But of course, no bubble can last forever, and the bigger they become, the harder they burst. And if they let these bubbles continue, we're already seeing it now. I've already discussed this ad nauseum, nausea. And that is disposable income, disposable money. Someone gets their check, they pay their bills. We've got extra money. Let's go out to eat. Let's go to the store. Let's buy a new TV. Let's whatever. There is far less disposable income because most everybody is paying high payments on their mortgage and or high rent. So that is sucking the extra money out of all of us, which means businesses will shut down, less traffic, less sales, less everything, which is why I'm doing these videos every day. Oh, car apocalypse, less sales there. Oh, retail apocalypse, less sales there. Oh, the restaurant apocalypse. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So they need the bubbles to burst, both the stock market and especially the housing. Mainly housing would do the trick. But the banks and everything else, they're invested in those securities, and they sold the securities on Wall Street, right? So the housing bust would cause that problem to bust because you'd have more bankruptcies again, and those securities aren't performing that they bundled because there's a bankruptcy or a foreclosure. Therefore, we need a bailout again from the government, so they can't afford to let the bubble pop. They need the bubble to stay up so they can keep this game going. But while they do that, the bubble is causing stress across the entire system, and it's going to reach a level, which is nearing now, where people have to pay so much money to live that nothing the Fed or government can do will matter anyways, because they'll have no disposable income if they don't let these bubbles burst. That's it. Take care.